Yeah. Oh man, there's a lot of health inspector issues behind the scenes that you don't even think about as a customer. But making sure that hot food stays hot, cold food stays cold.
Hey there, on today's episode, we have Lydia from Red Rock. Do you say resort?
Yes.
Red Rock Resort in Las Vegas. And I'm going to let her talk a little bit about herself. But today we're going to talk about venues and inclusive venues, and then some non-inclusive venues, and kind of maybe some pros and cons of each. So take it away, Lydia. Let's learn a little bit about you.
Hi, I'm Lydia. I work at Red Rock. I've been here about 9 years. I'm currently the director of special events. So I sell and service all of our weddings, birthday parties, and social events. We focus on the venue and the catering portion of the events. We are actually a non-inclusive venue, but I can definitely share pros and cons for both inclusive and non-inclusive options, because I think that there is a venue for everybody and not necessarily one type fits all. So
right.
Definitely some goods and some pros and cons to everything.
Yeah. Okay. Should we start with pros, or let's talk about inclusive venues. So first,
an inclusive venue basically means that they are a one-stop shop. So you can book the venue and they'll also provide your officiant and your DJ and your flowers and your photographer. So you have one point of contact. So the pros is that you have one point of contact. So that makes your life a little easier. If guests are traveling, or if the couple's traveling and it's a destination wedding, sometimes they feel like that's a little bit easier for them because they're not there to actually interview the vendors and know the vendors and all of that. So it makes their life a little easier that everything is just inclusive. These venues also tend to be a little bit more budget friendly because they have certain vendors that work at their venue full time. Or they have partnerships with certain venues. So that's definitely something to consider as well as when you're looking at your budget. I would say some of the cons when it comes to an inclusive venue is you don't have as much flexibility. So you might not get to choose which officiant you're using or which photographer you're using.
Right.
You are using their in-house staff or their contracted staff. So if you are somebody that wants to design every piece and part and pick every vendor and make sure the photography style aligns and make sure the officiant knows exactly what you want them to say, and that the DJ is somebody you can look at videos of and pick out and make sure they're right for your group.
Right.
You might want to lean more towards a non-inclusive venue just for that. And there are also venues that will do partial things, like you can ask them, hey, is it okay if I go get my own DJ? We can maybe take that out of the package because I have somebody that's really great. So I would say if you find a venue you love that is inclusive, to maybe just ask. They might be open to customizing some kind of package to fit your needs.
Sometimes, actually, just on that note too, we do have a ton of inclusive venues in Las Vegas. And being an outside vendor, like I never worked exclusively at a venue, but I would occasionally shoot at some of these venues. So like Lydia said, it's not like you can't ask. Some places may charge you like a little fee to have an outside vendor come in, or some places just don't really care. Maybe you won't necessarily get money back, but it's okay to bring your outside vendor. So just something to consider. Don't be scared away just because it's all inclusive.
Definitely. So for a non-inclusive venue, I definitely focus on the fact that our couples get to choose every vendor that comes into our building. So I encourage that. I encourage them to meet with the vendor, make sure they're a great fit. Also, one thing that is, I wouldn't say unique to my venue, but not all venues do, is that we require that couples hire their own wedding coordinator, which I also think is a huge point to touch on.
Yes.
A lot of times inclusive venues include coordination, but that venue coordinator is focused on many different things and not all of them are you. So if you are hiring an independent wedding coordinator, their sole focus is you. Their sole focus is not how much money the venue is making, or if you can get some kind of deal on this or that, or making sure the caterer is set up while you're also trying to fluff their dress and walk them down the aisle. So it's a little bit more attentive and a little bit more customized, I would say.
Right.
So that's a huge benefit to having a coordinator and being at a venue that is non-inclusive, is that vendors can really focus on what they're good at, and you don't have vendors that are doing more than they should be doing on your wedding day, when you want everybody to be focused on what their specialty is.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's talk about, I mean, you did say that your venue specifically does catering. Do most venues offer food, or is it just kind of across the board too, where you can bring in your own catering at some, maybe that's where they make a bulk of their revenue from catering or whatever. Can you speak on that a little bit?
Yeah, I would say there's definitely both out there.
Mm-hmm.
In Las Vegas in particular, the majority of our venues are exclusive to their catering because they do have in-house catering. We have big resorts with big conference centers, and so they have in-house catering and they want you to use their in-house catering. You will see more allowance of outside catering for standalone venues that don't necessarily have
kitchens. I mean, that's a good
the robustness to have in-house catering. So there are both options out there. Usually, if a venue doesn't offer in-house catering, they'll have partners. So they'll have like a list of 3 to 5 caterers that you are required to use. And the reason this is because food is a really touchy subject. Like there's
it really is.
Oh man, there's a lot of health inspector issues behind the scenes that you don't even think about as a customer. But making sure that hot food stays hot, cold food stays cold, that it's presented in a way that nothing is out for more than 2 hours, that everybody has been sanitized, that touches the food. Like there's a lot of behind the scenes regulation with catering. And I think that's why it's either in-house or you have to use approved caterers, just because the venue will know that those caterers meet all of the standards and qualifiers. I have not seen locally a venue that will just let you like bring in a potluck basically, or bring in your own food that you make in your kitchen, just because for a large group, it is just not safe and sanitary because we don't know where that food is coming from. Right. And
would the venue be liable for that?
Yes.
Okay.
So if we're serving it, we have some responsibility in making sure that it is safe, because
that makes sense.
Are presenting it. So yeah, that's a big concern. So it's not all about the exclusivity and revenue side. There is also a health component to it.
Yeah, thank you. I'm getting educated.
Yeah, definitely.
That's great. So, I mean, there's obviously a lot of things to consider in the food. Like you said, it's a touchy subject. Aside from the health stuff, I'm guessing that venues that they don't have catering in-house, but they have their referred or their partners. The other thing is with that is that they are tried and true. They're efficient. They can get in, they can get the job done. And it really saves time and honestly, probably in long-term cost to client too, for those, when there's partners as well. I can speak from experience, because my company is ceremony inclusive essentially. So when we use the same vendors over and over, they're tried and true. We've trained them. They know the locations. So when you're bringing somebody from outside our network, essentially, it does add little hiccups because they don't necessarily know the locations well, stuff like that. So I was just kind of speaking a little bit out of turn on that, but it does kind of make sense why they would want those too, aside from the health regulations.
Yeah. And it is, no matter what the scenario is, if a guest is at a certain venue, they're going to think of that venue when they associate the experience. So meaning if somebody comes to venue A and they have a horrible meal, they're going to think venue A serves horrible meals, even if it wasn't their in-house catering, it wasn't preferred caterer. It's still a reflection of the venue because the guests don't know. Your menu doesn't say that the food came from XYZ. You're just at the venue and you didn't have a good experience. So that's another reason why it's really important to use partners that you trust.
Right. Yeah, that's so true. Huh.
Mm-hmm.
Good one. Okay, let's talk a bit maybe cons of exclusive, or no, not exclusive, non-inclusive. Sorry, non-inclusive.
Yeah. I would just say it takes a little bit more work on your part because you do have to find all of your own vendors. So on one hand, you get the flexibility to choose your vendors. On the other hand, you have to do the work to choose your vendors. So you do have to be a little bit more, it does take a little bit more time. On the other hand, you could also hire a full service wedding planner or a company like yours, like Cactus Collective, where it's still an outside company, but they will do all of the vendor component for you. So then at least you only have two contacts. You have the venue and then you have a company that's providing all of the vendors. So there's still an option to get kind of an inclusive vibe at a non-inclusive place if you want to. And then I would say cost. So it is going to be a little bit more expensive to hire and pay all of your vendors separately than it will be to have a place that has everything all included. Just because, like I said, they work there constantly full time and they have better pricing to the venue because of that.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else we can add to our venue chat?
I would say that choosing a venue that has the most options for your guests on site is also a really good plus. So, for example, at Red Rock, we have restaurants, we have bowling, we have movies, we have a pool, we have a casino, there's a mall across the street. So if your guests come and stay here, they can get a room at the same venue, which is always a plus and having to have transportation. But they can be entertained without you having to entertain them the whole weekend. Whereas
which is a cost savings for you actually as well. That's one thing I think that people might not immediately associate with cost savings for them, but you're not having to spend your time timelining events for your guests, and you're going to maybe eventually feel obligated to do some paying for certain things. So that's a big savings, really.
Yeah. And on the flip side of that too, if you do want to have ancillary events, if you want to have an after party or a rehearsal dinner or a brunch, and all of your guests are staying at the same property, there will be options to just do everything there. So then you to try to wrangle everybody in multiple different places. Everything is nice and convenient. So I would definitely say that's a pro to a venue that has more of a resort style venue that has lots of things on site or at least close by. Because I know Vegas is unique in that we have resorts with all of these.
Yeah. I actually was just on the phone with a bride that was looking at getting married in Temecula. And she was saying 100% the same thing you just said, like, oh, we were recommending this winery and that winery. And she's like, yeah, but this one, my guests can stay there. And I want Temecula versus San Diego, for instance, because there's plenty for people to do, and they can kind of manage the entertainment for themselves in the region. So it's a big thing that maybe you might not consider initially, but something you might start thinking about, especially if you're having a destination wedding, as you get kind of into the planning a little bit. So super good point.
And if you're at one of those all-inclusive venues that might be a standalone venue that doesn't have anything else attached, I would definitely recommend to find a host hotel where you organize a room block, and then that becomes your home base if you do want rehearsal dinner, after party, brunch, things like that. So then you only have to go off site one time, and then you have your home base for everybody, and at least gives them an option to be where the action is and where everybody else is.
Yeah. I actually did that. I had my ceremony in one location, and then I had my reception. I actually had it 6 months later, but it was in a different location that was non-inclusive, which was awesome for us. But then I did book a hotel downtown, and I just said, this is where we're staying. It'd be great if you all stayed here, because then we could at least, maybe get together for meals or something like that. But if you don't want to, I don't care. Like that was kind of the thing. But I was able to see people more regularly because we had that hotel block or that room block. So that was
And
really nice.
Did a lot of people end up staying there?
They did. Yeah. They just make it
Definitely.
easy on people. Like,
Yep.
I didn't pick the most expensive place. I didn't pick the crappiest or the cheapest, I just picked like a medium range place, and it was downtown Las Vegas. So there was, again, plenty of things to do in that area. So, people got to do the Fremont Street experience and go to the old school casinos, stuff like that. So it was really fun for them.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And actually one thing that was kind of interesting, and I talk about Red Rock Resort to our clients a lot because we do a lot of weddings in Red Rock Canyon. And a lot of the things that you described are what we talk about. Like, we want to have a kind of a unique experience, like get off the strip, get outside of like maybe where a city would normally, people might normally go to the strip in Las Vegas, for instance. And so for in my case, we recommend Red Rock. It's close to Red Rock Canyon. It's different. A lot of people may not have ever stayed there. So it's a unique experience, and maybe think about providing those kind of experiences for guests as well. Like outside of the box, basically.
Yeah, and give them an option of somewhere to be. If you're not providing all of these planned events, at least you can say, here's an option for you, and at least set that up for them, and then really have to manage or babysit that anymore after you set something up.
Right. Yep. Exactly. Great. Well, actually, where can we find more information about your resort?
So our website is redrockresort.com. Really easy to go on there. It's super user-friendly website. We also have pages on the Knot and Wedding Wire with lots of reviews and photos and all of that. So that's a great place to look. I would say that's definitely the first place to go when you're looking for venues. I do really recommend reaching out to your network if you are looking at a local. But if you're a destination, the Knot and Wedding Wire are just such great options, because most venues that do frequent weddings, or not even frequent, but they care about doing weddings, will advertise at least on the Knot or Wedding Wire, because those are the largest sites.
Right.
And then you can start with information, and you don't necessarily have to use those sites for your planning process, but it can at least give you a list of what options are available. There's lots of other sites too that you can go on that do that. Those are just the ones we particularly market on. But yeah, definitely start there for photos. And once you see photos you like, just inquire and go from there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Actually, I have a question that just came to mind. So what's your title again?
Director of Special Events.
Okay. So when I'm just thinking about, it can be kind of intimidating to reach out to venues. Like, what is the first step? Actually, do you send the inquiry and then you come and set a meeting with someone like you, or what is that like?
Yeah. So the first step would be an email inquiry. Like, either their website will have a lead catcher, which is what we call the form you fill out, where you put your date, your guest count, and all of that. And then it goes into somebody like me or a coordinator's inbox to kind of vet at first. So, or you can send leads through the Knot, Wedding Wire, all of those different kind of places. So once we receive a lead, we reach out and send some basic information about weddings here. I would recommend to review those initial information emails before setting up site visits, just to not waste your time. So you want to make sure it's in line with your style, it's aligned with your budget, it can fit the amount of people you're looking for. If you have a set date, definitely ask if there's that date available. So I would just go through those few little things first. And then if it's a contender, then you just reply back and ask for a site visit. And on the site visit is where you would talk to somebody like me. I do all of our site visits, and ask any and all questions you have. There's no stupid question. We're all very aware that for most people, this is their first time planning a wedding and they don't work in the industry. So You can ask anything you want. I definitely a firm believer that you should know exactly what you're getting into before you sign any contracts. So
Right.
ask away all the questions.
Right.
And you can even ask for some additional information prior to a site visit if you're trying to narrow things down even more. Like, can you give me a customized proposal based on exactly what package I want or something like that, just so you really know what you're getting into. Or can you send me a few more photos of this one location? I really like it, but before we come out there, I just want to see a few different angles or whatever it is. So definitely open communication. The venue wants you to book them. So,
Right.
so any questions you have, they should be happy to answer. Yeah.
That's great. So the typical protocol though is if it does meet your budget and some of your style preferences is to go visit with somebody like you and go look at each. I mean, I know that your property has multiple locations for ceremonies and reception spaces, but being able to go check it out in person is fantastic. And I guess, maybe just don't be intimidated to do those kind of things. That's just part of the process and just go with it.
Yeah, you're the customer. We want your business. So
yeah,
intimidated by us.
Good. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Lydia. I appreciate you taking the time to record this episode with me. Any final thoughts?
No, just congratulations. I hope everybody has a good wedding.
Great. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.